I have spent hours going through all the weapons affected by Tarkov's latest attachment and gun balancing overhaul, and people seem to be so confused about what has actually happened. So today I'll be showing you the 5 most underrated weapons now in EFT, starting with an old classic, the AKS-74N. Okay, so you might be wondering why the AKS-74N in particular. This seems an oddly specific weapon to use, and typically it's not one that is the best. But what happened in this particular balancing patch is that the base recoil of this gun was reduced more than anything else. If we take off all of the components, we can see what that base recoil should be. It's the one that all the attachments actually affect. That's how the recoil system works in this game. And you end up with 32 ergonomics and 90 vertical recoil. So this 90 vertical recoil base, this used to be 120 before the patch. Now the other AKs have something similar to this. They kind of range between 90 and 110, around that. But the AKS-74N and the AKS-74 as well, they both are the only ones that have 90 vertical recoil, which is quite interesting. Now I am going to switch back and forth between the AKS-74N and the AK-12 because both of those weapons are pretty similar, and you can see that the fire rate on this guy is 650. So if you do want to have the increased fire rate for the AK-12, which I personally do like, then you can use that gun instead. But it is a lot more expensive. We saw a second ago on the marketplace just how cheap these things are. You can buy them from Prapple for 38k. So if you want something budget and actually has technically the lowest recoil, and the fire rate helps with that too, then the AKS-74N is the thing that's going to do the job. So to mod this out, the most important part that we need to pay attention to is the stock. And this is pretty much the same across all of the AK compatible weapons at this point, which is that if you use one of the PT locks of any variety, whichever one's compatible with the gun you're using, and then you use the PT1, and then you put the pad on the back of that, that one is actually the minimum recoil for almost all of these types of weapons, and it also comes with decent ergonomics as well, so you don't really have to compromise. This is actually even better than the PT3. If I show it up here, you can see now, this gives you 4 more ergonomics, but it also gives you slightly less vertical recoil as well. And because of the way that the ergonomics works right now, you could choose to put that on if you wanted to, but oftentimes you don't actually need to. For the pistol grips, you can choose any of the decent ones. The MOE AK is usually one of the cheapest, but you can choose this, or the Tango Down, or the Scorpius. All of these give you +5 and -1.5 recoil, so it doesn't really matter which one you pick. For the receiver on top, we're going to be choosing the PDC, because this one gives you 1.5 ergonomics and -0.6 recoil, so this is better than the other two by a little margin, but we may as well take it. For a magazine, we're going to stick on the 60 round mag because this is just the best and is compatible with everything. They're also pretty cheap these days on the marketplace. They're only about 20k, so you may as well use them. And they don't give you that much negative ergo anymore because of prior changes that BSG made ages ago. -10 ergonomics versus a bog standard regular mag like the AK-12 mag, which gives you -0.5. So you're only 9 ergo worse off using a 60 rounder, which is kind of insane. Even the 40s are -4. So it's like 6 ergonomics worse than using a 45. You could use the 45 if you want to, but these fit into the same pouches as these guys. So it makes it very easy. You don't have to compromise on your rig or anything like that to use this particular part, which is super, super good. And 60 rounds is just so good. It's just so amazing in Tarkov. So next up, we're going to look at the handguards, and you might remember based on the changes that BSG made, handguards no longer have any recoil component to them, with some small exceptions, and this is the VS combo, which is -0.5. Now, it depends on whether you think it's actually worth taking. You can either use the white one or the regular one. I don't think 0.5 recoil is worth it, and you get 17 ergonomics for it. If you decide not to bother with that, you could just go with the regular gas tube. And for the handguard itself, one of the standout ones that's looking really good right now is the AK-545 Aggressor, and this gives you +19 ergonomics. It's 2 more than the VS that we just looked at. And onto this, we can kind of choose what we want, but on this particular type of build, I'm usually leaning towards ergonomics on the vertical foregrip or angle grip, and so I often end up using the Strike Industries Cobra because this gives +12 now. There are a few options. You can use the shift grip or whichever else, and if you do want to step down by 1 step, you can go down to the SE5, which gives you 6 less ergo, but 2% recoil. I'm just going to use the Cobra for the time being. And to make up for the recoil, we're then going to put the waffle onto this. So this requires the reactor on the front with -8 recoil, and then you put the waffle suppressor on here with -5. This is a lot better than the other suppressors for this particular platform. The waffle just beats them all hands down, and so although it is very negative on the ergonomics, we can offset it here and also partly with the stock, because the stocks are just pretty good. So this gets us to 41.5 ergo and 53 vertical recoil. So this is really, really low. The lowest that you can get this gun to is 49. It's actually the only one that can get sub 50 out of the 545 caliber, which is kind of interesting. A few little tweaks that you can do to it. Obviously, you can put on the knurled charging handle to get 3 more ergonomics here. And then you can put whatever sight you like on this thing. You may, if you do really want to squeeze everything out, you're going to go for the Geisley mount, and then the Geisley top, and then whatever you want inside. I usually use a Voodoo or a Razor. The Voodoo is technically slightly less ergonomically damaging than the other, and you put a tactical device on this, no problem. But this is 42.5 ergo, 53 vertical recoil. There's no problems with overswing anymore because that seems to be gone, which is quite interesting. And if you do technically want to be slightly cheeky, because we've got the N version here, you can add this, the AK303 mount, which gives you +2 ergo. This is a 2-part mount, and you can just stick the first half on to give you +2. I think BSG should change this so that it's only the top part that gives you +2, because you can use one of these top rails and just stick it on and get 2 ergo for free, which I don't think that should be a thing, but yeah, we can take that and improve our ADS speed a little bit just by adding that part on if we want to squeeze out every last possible drop out of this gun. Obviously, the other possibility for this is that you can go loud. So the best non-suppressed muzzle brake is the RRD4C. This has got exactly the same vertical recoil as the Waffle, but you add on 22 ergonomics. So now you're at 66 ergo and 53 vertical recoil. Given that you can now see over the top of the muzzle flash because of BSG's changes, this is something that you can consider. Probably not with this particular loadout, but if you wanted to go for some kind of aggressive version, you know, you've got like a red dot on it or some other particular optic, whichever is your favorite, then you could potentially go loud instead as well. It's just up to you. Now, because I have been using this one a bit more, I'm going to show you the AK-12 as well. I'm just going to quickly build it and show you the comparison between the two. So you can see here, you can basically build it in about the same way. The comparison build that we were looking at before was this one here, which had 43 ergonomics and 54 vertical recoil. So you basically get a bit more ergonomics with the AK-12, you get a little bit less recoil, but then you do get the 700 RPM. And I would say that there's a kind of nice feel factor to the AK-12, just something about the rhythm of the way it fires at 700 RPM rather than 650. It obviously doesn't match the 800 RPM of the M4 or clearly the NL545, which are probably still the meta guns within this particular patch, especially for this caliber. The AK-12 does feel pretty good, honestly, and the balancing changes that they've made to this means that you can run a pretty decent one and they feel nice to use. You'll probably notice it's pretty much the same build, PT1 plus pad, pistol grip of your choice, 60 round mag, Cobra. We've got the nice handguard on here, and then the Waffle. Again, you can swap over to the RRD if you want to. That gets you up to near 70 ergonomics, which is super good. And then you pick a sight and some kind of tactical device, and you'll be good to go with this particular gun. One of the big advantages of 545 in general is that you can find ammo all over the place, especially on reserve, but you can also go to other rooms. Streets is really good for this. If you go to the Terror Group Armory, use the key for that. You could go to MVD, which also has really good ammo inside, and you can also go to Concordia Security as well. There are other places too, like Woods Attachment Shack, USEC camp on Woods as well, a few places like that, but there's quite a lot of ammo, and you often will find BP, BS, Igolnik, 7N40 for the 545 weapons, which means you can keep your ammo topped up consistently rather than having to craft constantly in the workbench, which is pretty much what you have to do for anything decent that's 7.62 or above. Next up, we're going to be looking at the RFB. This is a weapon that I have probably talked about continuously over the past couple of years, ever since its introduction. As you can see on the marketplace, this weapon is highly underrated. You can tell because it's under 40k. You could probably buy this and almost sell it back to the trader for more money than what you're getting it on the flea market. There is a barter here, 2 gas analyzers. You could barter a gas an for a CPU fan as well. But at this price, you're probably just worth just simply buying one from the flea market here rather than messing about. Now, what happened to the RFB? This used to have a base recoil of 48. This was changed in the latest patch to 80. You're hearing that right. It is over a 30-point boost to ergonomics. So when you grab this gun and open it up, it now starts at 87.8 ergo, which is outrageous and unheard of within 7.62 by 51. What this means is that the RFB is now a kind of interesting choice. Yes, the recoil doesn't get as good as something like an RSAS or an SR25, but the ergonomics is so high, then you can snap ADS on this really, really quickly. And because it's semi-auto, the recoil doesn't matter as much as it would with a full auto gun. It matters still, for sure, but it doesn't matter as much. So depending on how you want to use it, this thing is super snappy and you're going to be able to lock onto targets immensely quickly with this. Now, as usual, the RFB doesn't have that many components, although they have added a couple as time's gone on. Can't change the barrel or anything right now, so you're just going to put on some kind of vertical foregrip. Doesn't really matter what you do. You could use really anything you like at this point. So the ones that reduce recoil by the most is the gunfighter, if you want to lean into it that way. So that's this one up here. This one reduces ergonomics, but we don't really care. And then we've got the RFB spacer, which we're going to put on the barrel there. And then you can put on the QDC muzzle brake kit if you want to reduce recoil the most. That takes you down to 110, which, as we said, is still pretty high. And then from here, the other things you could do with it, we've got this mount here, which people have kind of forgotten about, because this allows you to add a laser to it, which is the quad rail 3-inch mount. I see people not using this, whereas you really should. And then that allows you to put on a tactical device or something, so at least you have decent point fire with this gun. And then you can put whatever you like on the top. So we're going to end up with somewhere around like the high 50s, even going for like a pure recoil focused weapon. Then you can stick on the 30 rounder, which is basically a no-brainer because the ergonomics these days is -4 versus -2 of the 20. So you can stick that on. And as I said in one of my previous videos, weight doesn't really matter anymore. The overswing effect isn't there, and it doesn't affect the ADS speed anymore either. So you may as well pack as many rounds as you can into this weapon. This is going to feel really, really good. If you want it to be like absolutely instantaneous, then of course you can change this over to like an SE5, for example, and that's going to get you up to about 67 ergo, which after this kind of stops mattering, or you could put it on the SI code. The changes to the recoil is almost non-existent with the vertical foregrips on the RFB because the base recoil is relatively low, so you may as well just run ergo if you really want. I know some people like trying to minimize the recoil as much as they can, but it's really up to you. And then we could just add another LPVO, whatever you like, a Voodoo with one of these top rails, 71 ergo while suppressed with a 30 round magazine and a laser flashlight, 115 vertical recoil, which admittedly isn't that low, but this thing is super, super easy to use and very, very snappy. So the big benefit of the RFB is that it runs some of the best ammo in the game whilst being incredibly cheap as a base platform. Obviously some of the mods are kind of expensive, but you can put what you like on it and run it how you want because the ergonomics are so high, you can kind of abuse it. It doesn't really make any difference. If you go through all the quests and eventually complete Peacekeeper's Wet Job Part 6, you can then craft M80A1 in the hideout, and this is one of the best ammos because it has 55 penetration and 75 damage, which means that it even rivals the Classics plates that people are using all the time, and you can do so with a 45k gun. So people who want best bang for buck, the RFB has actually become really, really insane. Previously, it was not as good as the other DMRs within 7.62 NATO, but now the ergonomics is so high, you just can't get this level of ergonomics without sacrificing a ton of recoil on the others. So this has put the RFB in a kind of unique spot, where if you do want fast ADS speed, you still want to use 7.62 NATO, you could sacrifice recoil for it, but have a really snappy ability to lock onto people's heads super, super quick with this rifle. In at number 3, I'm actually going to cheat a little bit here and put two guns in the same category because they're kind of two halves of the same coin, one which is the Mark 47 Mutant and the second which is the RD704. People like different ones for different reasons, but we'll look at the Mutant first because this one historically has been more difficult to mod and actually get right. It's a little bit more nuanced on modding. And interestingly, in the changes, this one took an ergonomic nerf, bizarrely, but it took a big recoil buff at the same time. So this means that we don't have to go all in on recoil quite as much. This is the interesting part. Even just looking at the stats on their own and the stat changes, it doesn't necessarily mean that the gun has been nerfed or buffed in that particular way, because even though the Mutant has had ergonomics removed, because recoil has been removed too, it means you don't need to lean so much into the recoil parts anymore, which means you end up possibly with higher ergo for the same recoil, or vice versa. So anyway, so the Mutant, reason why it's complicated is because it has two barrels, and historically the long barrel was the best one for vertical recoil, which is what you wanted, and you really actually needed it. But the short barrel had all the ergo on it, and if you went long barrel, you ended up with not enough ergo. If you went short barrel, you ended up with not enough vertical recoil reduction. They've kind of streamlined this a bit more, and they're pretty close these days. So -7.4 recoil on the long barrel, and -4.6 recoil on the short barrel. You can make this work now with the long barrel, and I'll show you how this works. So with the handguards, there's one that you want to pay attention for, and this is actually the same on some of the other platforms as well. It's not that easy as just scrolling through and looking at what they give, because you might miss this one here, which looks like it's going to lose you ergonomics versus some of these others which give you +4. But the URX, and some people will know about this already, but the URX has these extra attachment parts on the side. So you can add these things here, these long panels, and there's one that you can attach to each side. So this ends up adding 6 ergonomics overall and ends up being the best handguard for ergonomics out of all the choices on the Mutant, interestingly. So we add both of these on the side, and we'll put in the gas block because we need to. We'll put the CMMG one, which is the one that comes with the Mutant itself. We can keep this pistol grip, that's totally fine. And then on the stocks, what makes this slightly tricky is that you don't get access to the AK stocks. So we can't just go PT1 and pad anymore because we have to use an AR-15 style platform stock on this because of the way that this gun is built. If you're going to go for the minimum recoil, you have to go for the ERE and the PRS Gen 3. But I'm going to go for something kind of more middle ground and bang for buck, which is the ARE, which has a little bit more ergo but slightly less vertical recoil. And then we're going to go for the ACS. Let me just find the one in black here. I really hate how the ordering here isn't alphabetical and the same every time. It's extremely annoying. So we can see now we've got 62 ergo and 88 vertical recoil, which honestly isn't too bad. We are going to go for the most recoil reducing suppressor because you can go for an ergonomic foregrip, like I said before, like the shift or something, and then put all the recoil reduction onto the suppressor, because from a sort of ratios perspective, it usually ends up better that way around. So I'm going to put the 3-inch rail on here, and onto that we're going to just go for the SI Cobra. So this gets you into a pretty good spot. 53 ergonomics, which is good these days, and 73 vertical recoil. This is definitely usable. Now, the weird part about the Mutant is you can't get a regular drum, like a 50-round drum. You either end up having to jump up to something like 70-odd, which you can do now. Like this one, it only reduces your ergo by 7. So you can either go for this, or you can go for one of the 40-rounders if you're willing to use the 3x1s within your loadout. This is not too bad. I'm still about 50 ergo, so this one does give you some problems, right? Because you need like 2x2s, you need to manage your mags and stuff. It's a bit of a pain. But yeah, you could go for the 45-rounder if you want, and then we could just put whatever optics on top. So I think this build is pretty good. You can technically go for the shorter barrel one if you want, the expense of a little bit of recoil. Doesn't make that much difference. We saw before the ergo swing between the two ends up being about 8. So you're going to end up at about 58 rather than 49, and then you're going to have a little bit worse vertical recoil, but this is totally doable. You can also run the loud muzzle brakes on here as well. We don't have access to the RRD, so you have to use something else. For 7.62, it's typically the red brake these days, so it has minus 12.5 recoil reduction on it. So you could use this, and this is actually technically slightly better than the PRS. So you can see that it takes you down to 71. And then, yeah, just add an optic that you like and some kind of tactical flash device on the side so that you can get your good point fire bonus. And this is a really, really, really solid gun. So the other one we're going to look at is the RD704. This is probably my preference. I just think this is easier to mod. You don't really have to think about it too much, although the Mutant is a bit easier than it used to be. And this guy benefits from the fact that you can use the PT AKM lock and use the PT1 and use the butt pad on here as well. There's a reoccurring theme here. And we could swap over from the Tango down to the MOE AK, because this one gives us 2 more ergo. This is the crowning jewel for the RD704, which is the 50-round X-Product drum mag, which is really nice. This is only minus 9 ergonomics, and it fits in a 2x1 as well, which makes it super, super good. It's one of the reasons why I love the RD so much, because the magazines are so easy, it makes it so easy to run the rest of your loadout. On top of this, we're then going to run the PDC again. This is the same one that we saw from the AK-74 and the AK-12. You don't get any handguard choices, so we're just going to put an M-LOK 4.1-inch rail on, and then we're going to add on an SI Cobra. And then on the front, we'll add the QDC again, because the RD74 has got ergo to spare. Put the charging handle on, and for this one, we will just go for the full deal, which is the Geisley, and the little mount on top to give us +1, and the Voodoo. Yeah, on this, I'm even just going to add the tactical device just so I can show you the full build. And this gets us to 75 vertical recoil and 60 ergonomics, which is crazy. You can, if you really want to, you can actually change this to one of the recoil attachments instead, if you so wish. You've got something like the SE5, which is sort of more middle ground, but it's all much of a muchness. You're probably not really going to be able to tell, honestly, between these swings. I think the SI Cobra is probably the best one, just because 60 ergonomics, I feel, is a bit more impactful than the reduction down to 70 vertical recoil from 75. So this is really how I prefer to do it. Again, this one can take the muzzle brakes, which are loud, and then weirdly this one does take the red brake again, the same as the other guy, so it doesn't take the RRD this time. So we're going to put that on here, and that takes you up to 75 or something, so then you can really lean into the ergo foregrips if you want to. But this is super snappy. The RD704 has a very slightly slower RPM than the Mutant, so its time to kill is a little bit longer, but I just really like the way this gun feels. It feels great to me. I've used it for a long time, and with this particular patch, it got both its ergonomics and its recoil reduced at the same time, so it's actually relatively better than it used to be. You could craft BP in the workbench as well after completing Intimidator at level 45, and I imagine more and more people will probably be getting to level 45 this wipe, because this account is never going to wipe ever again. So even if you're taking slow progress, you don't need to worry about the game wiping, and you will be able to access 7.62 BP eventually. All right, in at number 4, we have a strange contender here, which is the RPD. It's actually a pretty fun weapon. There's 2 versions here, the RPD and the RPDN, but it actually doesn't matter which you choose anymore. I always used to pick the RPDN because it had this dovetail mount, which allowed you to get a tactical device on it, because otherwise for the regular RPD, in the past, there was no way to get a tac device and get your point fire bonus on here, which made it quite hard to use, especially with the overswing, which just came innately with the gun because it was so heavy. You can see it's 6.6 kilos with no magazine, and has a 100 rounder, and the rounds are quite heavy, so there's no way to avoid it in the past. But with overswing gone, and the fact you can add a tactical device to either now, you can pretty much choose either. The RPDN is slightly easier because this one has a threaded barrel already. So if you do just want to pay for the barter, just go and have a look for the prices at the time and see whether it's worth it. Whereas the regular RPD does not have a threaded barrel to begin with, and you'll have to buy a different barrel to mod it. But I will show you this, so it's up to you as to which one you go for. I'm going to grab the RPD just because it's easier and it's in rubles and it's just straight here on the flea market. So first things first, I'm actually going to remove the bipod because it adds 8 ergonomics. You don't really need to worry about that. Then we're going to need to change over this barrel. As you can see, we've just got this little kind of thread protector, and that's it. We can't add on any suppressors or muzzle brakes or anything like this. So you do have to change to one or the other. I typically just go for the shortest one because it gives you the most ergonomics, and then you get the full plethora of suppressors. If you do just want to go loud, you can stick on the RRD4C, which I think is probably a nice idea for this particular weapon. You can go suppressed if you want to, but fear and dominance is really the name of the game with this gun. It only fires in full auto. There is no single, so that kind of gives you an idea of kind of how this is supposed to be used. And then for the handguard, you now have the option to add this, the DS Arms railed handguard. And this allows us to add a vertical foregrip for a start, something like the SI Cobra. Again, we may as well because we only have 63 vertical recoil already without actually having to do anything. The magazine is the Boobin. This is the huge 100 round mag. So top loading this is probably a good idea. Just stack PS underneath and either put PP or BP on top in whatever ratio you're comfortable with, depending on how much ammo you've got. And then you can also change over this stock section as well to the RPD DS Arms buttstock. I'm going to put that on. And then we get a choice of 3 different pistol grips. The best one is the AG Foul pistol grip. And then we can choose between some of these regular stocks as well. Because this gun already has such low vertical recoil, I am very tempted just to take this guy, which is the Viper PDW stock. This one has the highest ergonomics in the game, but it also has the lowest recoil. So we're going to use that and just put that on there, because again, that gets us back to 66. I don't think it really matters too much. Now, you can see the lack of dovetail means that we don't have a way to put a sight or an optic on the back of this weapon, but I don't think that matters too much. I was messing about with this with chat actually, and because of the way that the gun looks and feels, if you do put a dovetail on it, the optic's like really close to your face, and it's actually kind of off-putting. So it's surprising how nice it is if you put whatever your favorite dot or holographic is on the front handguard. I usually hate doing this. I never ever normally do this, and I did try it the other day and it honestly felt pretty good. Clearly you can't put an LPVO down there, so if you do want to use it in that way, you're going to need to go for the RPDN and put a dovetail mount on. I'll just show you that in a quick second, but you have a lot of choices here, and most of the time you're probably not going to be using this with a big scope on it. The MOA is 2.13, so it's okay. You probably have to be using the longer barrel if you want to get better MOA. But for this is not really the way that I tend to use this gun. So this is pretty cheap, honestly. And as I said, you've got a tactical device. So when you've got that on, even in the IR mode, you're going to get a point fire bonus. So this makes the gun really sing. I should mention, actually, I nearly forgot to point out, it has 60 ergo for an RPD. This is crazy. This build has lower recoil than the RD704 and about the same ergonomics or as the Mutant, which is mental, right? Like, I think this is absolutely bonkers. You could go suppressed if you wanted to. Any of these will do. You've got the choice of the regular ones for the AKs, or you've got the AKM 308, so you could put something like the Thunder Beast on it if you wanted to, because that one keeps a bit more ergonomics, so we don't really care about the vertical recoil. So that's 50 and 70 and suppressed with an RPD, which seems pretty sweet. It's another option for you. But yeah, the ergonomics is this is what makes the gun so good now. So the ergo got boosted, and you've got all these new parts, and the way that the parts work now means that the ergonomics is way different to the way it used to be. The ergonomics is the only thing that affects ADS speed now, so the game completely ignores the fact it's 8 kilograms. It does affect arm stamina a little bit, but you don't have any overswing. So let's just quickly go to the RPDN. I just want to show you very quickly before we move on to the next one about this dovetail mount. If you want an LPVO, you do have to use this dovetail mount. So here you don't have that many options. We have to use one of the old tricks. So I often used to use the Cobra. You can use either actually, either the Pillad or the Cobra. If you stick the Cobra on here, this won't actually let you put any ringed optics on there unless you use this, the QD Tactical Picatinny Riser. Most guns don't require this anymore. We used to use this on the SKS, but now you can put an actual proper rail on that gun. You don't need to. But on the RPD, you still do because of the limited amount of dovetail mount rails that you can attach. So once you've attached the QD Picatinny rail, you can then add the Night Force rings or whatever else it is that you might want to. And obviously from here, you can change the barrels over and add the threads and whatever else that you might want to do. But this allows you to actually put a scoped optic on if you want to. And then you can go suppressed, and then you can snipe people with it if you want. So as we were saying before, the RPDN uses the same caliber of ammo as the Mutant and the RD704, which is 7.62 by 39. With the 100 round mags, unless you really have been crafting like a maniac, you probably don't just want to fill it with BP, for example, unless you literally do just have thousands and thousands of it. So typically I will stack the bottom with PS. This gun is kind of a bullet hose, and it does have the fastest fire rate across all of the 7.62 by 39 guns at 700 RPM, which does make it stand out against a weapon like the M60, which for 7.62 NATO is really, really slow. That one's only at 550 RPM, which is why I think the RPDN actually is probably a slightly better weapon, because you get the fire rate of the AK-12, but you're firing out 7.62 by 39. And with all the other changes that have been made, it's actually a little bit fearsome. You can put a Buben mag in your backpack, and you can actually reload it manually from the backpack. You don't technically need to take a 2x2 with you in your rig. And with 100 rounds, you probably don't need to reload that often. The load and unload speed modifier has been changed, again, relatively recently by BSG, so it doesn't take an eternity to pack anymore. So it's still worth taking a few good rounds, maybe BPs or PPs, depending on which you've got access to. And you can repack the top couple of rounds in there if you think you're going to get into some PvP in those raids. Otherwise, you can just keep spraying down AIs with the 100 round mags, and it has got such huge stopping power. It's either great as a solo against multiple opponents, or in a team just to lay down covering fire and get people's heads down and allow your team to move around. Last thing to point out for the last set of guns that we've just been looking at is the ammo boxes on the flea market. You can buy PP on the flea. So if you don't have Prapor 4, you can go and buy PP rounds from the flea market for 60k. So yeah, they were kind of expensive. 20 pieces for 60,000 is like 3k per round. But this allows you to put some in the top if you think you're going to get into PvP. Otherwise, yeah, you could just go and buy a bunch of PS from the trader. You don't need to buy boxes for this, or BP from Ref or from doing the craft. So if you are an arena player, then you can get some BP rounds from Ref as well as another option. Otherwise, you're probably going to be wanting to just buy PP from Prapor and then turning that into BP in the hideout once you reach level 45. Final weapon that we're going to look at is the SVD. Now, I'm actually not going to do as deep a dive into this one as I did with the others, because I just put out a full video about the SVD, but it does fit into this category of the most underrated weapons because of just how much it has been boosted by this particular patch. So if you want all the details there, before we jump into some raids, go and watch that video, but I'll give you a quick rundown if you don't want to go through the full video there. I would normally just keep it in its default config. This one with the front trunnion is totally fine. And the best build for it is to take the SVD modernized handguard. You're going to add something again like a Cobra, because I think that's worth it. And then you're going to add the suppressor onto the front. This is going to get us to the bulk of our recoil reduction. And for the most part, you can actually just kind of leave it as this, to be honest. You're going to add some kind of rail on over the side if you want. The AK-303 mount is not a bad choice, to be honest, because this one gives you the +2 ergo, and then you can put the QD Picatinny onto that as well. Gets you a little bit extra. For the pistol grip, the SVD one is not too bad, but you can swap it over for a little bit more recoil reduction. Go over to the MOE AK or one of those. And then for the stock again also isn't actually too bad either, to be honest with you. It's kind of a little bit extra to add. Something different, but you can go in here and add something good. Either a recoil reducing one like the ERE and the PRS Gen 3, which will get you down to 89 vertical recoil and 41 ergonomics, which is really, really quite decent. Or the combination that we looked at earlier, which is looking to be one of the best bang for buck middle ground combos, which is the ARE plus the ACS on the back there. And that's going to get you to 50 ergo and 94 vertical recoil. But you can probably see here how little difference it actually makes. You basically only gain 1 vertical recoil reduction for doing this. So often it's actually just fine leaving the SVD stock on just as it is, which is kind of interesting. It's like kind of weird just how good that thing has actually become. And kind of the same for the pistol grip as well. Like you get a little bit of vertical reduction, which I think is worth it, to be honest, over the stock, because it's cheap to just buy an MOE AK and slap it on. And then there you go. And this gun is like totally serviceable. With the suppressor, you've got 50 ergo with the SVD, which would have been absolutely unheard of previously. Stick the 20 round mag in, and you've still got like over 40 ergonomics, even once you've added in your optics and your lasers and tactical devices and that kind of thing. If you're using the SVD, you really do want to make sure that it does actually kill with a headshot. And so you probably want to go and buy PS from the flea market if you don't have access to it on the traders yet, because PS gives you a slightly better pen chance through class 4 helmets than something like LPS or T45 does. Otherwise, you want to be going to your hideout, you want to be crafting BT, because this is the best ammo that you can get. It's got the same pen as M80A1, and it's really super good. So next up, now that we've covered all of the guns in detail, let's go and see how some of them performed in a few of my recent raids. Okay. Did I kill this guy? Yes, the reload speed buff is sick. I'm not sure why you'd use the 209 over just a 7.62 by 51 gun though.
Внимание
Was the
персонала.
only issue.
Лифты в секторе О введены в строй.
Which one's sector O? Well, he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, really.
Shit, over there. You motherfuckers!
Look at this. Old school Chad. Humanity armband. Killer tracksuit. Shattered mask. Oh god.
Кепка, кепка! Вон он, блядь!
Okay, that's the rest of them.
Вот вы! Ты чё обосрался, а? Чё ты где? А ты петуха!
Oh, this is horrible.
Служивый на!
Jeez. What do you like about the RP? So the RP has been buffed, and now it has insanely high ergo. So this gun is 76 ergonomics. You know, 30 round mag on a 7.62 by 51 gun with a suppressor. 76. Like it's really, really high. Ergo on this is like out of this world now.
Вон он, блядь, ебать!
Incredibly aggressive scavs. Well, we did a lot here. With Gluey. Ooh, this guy's got a freaking hard on for me. Goons? Nah. Oh wait, it could be the goons. It actually is the goons, you're right. That's funny. Oh man. You take like 3 headshots. Where's the pipester? Love it. What was going on there? This is just a scav coming. Yeah, we're downstairs. Yeah, I really don't know. Oh, I don't know. I don't know, Governor. I'm not sure. Ooh, where did I die from? Damn. Down the corridor? Could he see me? Was I too close to the edge, the corner? He must have come up the stairs and like gone down the corridor. Crazy. I didn't hear him move at all. Spilled my coffee. That scared me. Who'd we die to? Ooh. Ooh. He's a gamer. He's a real gamer.
Попал в него! Кепка!
He did not want to die.
Вон он, сука!
Ouch. Oh no, please heal the thorax. Why didn't that work? Come on. I think I killed 2 people. I don't know where was the other guy? Level 7. Unsuppressed SVs isn't that much money? No, I mean they're only 90k base and the modding You know, they're expensive-ish to mod, but like, it'd be hard pressed to actually get people to spend money on those parts, I think. Unless you really spend a lot of time like piecing it apart and stuff. Pretty low level boys, but am I getting shot from? God. All the scavs are guards today. Dude, he's got freaking Zebrallo. So I hope you guys all have fun with these underrated weapons. I think the ones that I enjoyed the most, probably, that surprised me a little bit, was using the mutant, and especially using the RFB. The RFB in particular was super fun, just to have a really snappy DMR in 7.62 NATO, and the mutant was interesting to use just because historically I've tended to prefer the RD704. But the ability to build a good mutant these days and run it with a decent RPM has actually been pretty cool. So as always, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as usual, have fun in your raids.